Varadhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtottara Satta Shri Srimad Abhaya Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Guru. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtamutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Radana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutte Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 7, text 37. The chapter is called Schedule Incarnations. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, it's 38, right. Yarhalayeshvapi satam naharir kathasyu Pashandino dvijajana vrishalani nridheva Swaha swadha vashatiti smagiro na yatra Shasta bhavishyati kaler bhagavan yugante Yarhala yeshvapi satam naharir kathasyu Pasham dino dvijajana vrishala nrdeva Swaha swadha vashat iti smagiro na yatra Shasta bhavishyati kaler bhagavan yugante Yarhala yeshvapi satam nahare kathasyu Pashandino dvijajana vrishala nidheva Dvijajana vrishala nrideva Swaha swadha vashatiti smagiro na yatra Shasta bhavishyati kaler bhagavan yugante Yarhala yeshvapi satam nahare kathasyu Pashandino dvijajana vrishala nrdeva Swaha swadha vashatiti smagiro na yatra Shasta bhavishyati kaler bhagavan yugante
Yarkayaleshvapi satam nahare kathasyu Pashandino dvijajana vrishala nideva Sahasvadha vishatiti smagiro na yatra Shastra bhavishyati kaler bhagavan yugante
ladies. Yarhalayeshvapi satam naharer kathasyu Pashandino dvijajana vrishala nirdeva Swaha svadhavashatiti smagaro nayatra Shasta vavishyati kale bhagavan yugante Yarhalayeshvapi satam naharer kathasyu Pashandino dvijajana vrishala nirdeva
Swaha swaha vishatiti smagiro nayatra Shastra bhavishyati kale bhagavan yugante
Yarhi,
Yarhi,
when it happens, Alayeshu, in the residence of, Api, even, Satam, civilized gentlemen, Na, no, Hare, of the personality of Godhead, Katha, topics, Syu, will take place, Pashandina, atheists, Dvijajana, persons declaring themselves to be the higher three classes, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. Vrishala, the lower class Shudras. Nrideva, ministers of the government. Swaha, hymns to perform sacrifice. Swadha, the ingredients to perform sacrifices. Vashat, the altar of sacrifice. Iti, all these. Sma, shall. Gira, words. Na, never. Yatra, anywhere. Shasta, the chastiser. Bhavishyati, will appear. Kale, of the Kali age. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Yuga ante, at the end of. Is it possible to close that window? Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter, at the end of Kali-yuga, when there exist no topics on the subject of God, even at the residence of so-called saints and respectable gentlemen of the three higher castes, and when the power of government is transferred to the hands of ministers elected from the low-born Shudra class or those less than them, and when nothing is known of the techniques of sacrifice, even by word, at that time the Lord will appear as the supreme chastiser. Purport. The symptoms of the worst conditions of the material world at the last stage of this age, called Kali-yuga, are stated herein. The sum and substance of such conditions is godlessness. Even the so-called saints and higher castes of the social orders, generally known as the Dvijajanas, or the thrice-born, will become atheists. As such, all of them will practically forget even the holy name of the Lord. And what to speak of his activities? The higher caste of society, namely the intelligent class of men, guiding the destinies of the social orders, the administrative class of men guiding the law and order of society, and the productive class of men guiding the economic development of the society, must all be properly well versed in knowledge of the Supreme Lord, knowing factually his name, quality, pastimes, entourage, paraphernalia, and personalities. The saints and the higher caste or orders of the society are judged by their portion of knowledge in the science of God, or tattva jnana, and not by any kind of birthright or bodily designations. Such designations, without any knowledge of the science of God and practical knowledge of devotional service, are considered to be all decorations of dead bodies. And when there is too much inflation of those decorated dead bodies in society, there develop so many anomalies in the progressive, peaceful life of the human being. Because of the lack of training or culture in the upper section of the social orders, they are no more to be designated as Dvijajanas, or the twice born. The significance of being twice born has been explained in many places in these great literatures. And again, one is reminded hearing that birth executed by the sex life of the father and the mother is called animal birth. But such animal birth and process of life and progress, of life on the animal principles of eating, sleeping, fearing and mating, without any scientific culture or spiritual life, is called the Shudra life, or, to be more explicit, the uncultured life of the lower class of men. It is stated herein that the government power of society in the Kali-yuga will be passed over to the uncultured, godless laborer class of men, and thus the Nridevas, or the ministers of the government, will be the Vrishalas, or the uncultured lower class men of society. No one can expect any peace and prosperity in a human society full of uncultured lower classes of men. The symptoms of such uncultured social animals are already in vogue, and it is the duty of the leaders of men to take note of it and try to reform the social order by introducing the principles of twice-born man. Train in the science of God consciousness. This can be done by expanding the culture of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. In the degraded condition of human society, the Lord incarnates as the Kalki avatar and kills all the demoniac without mercy. Yarhalaye shvapi satam naharer kathasyu vashandino dvijajana vrishala nirdeva swaha swadha vashat iti smagirona yatra shasta bhavishyati kalir bhagavan yugante. Thereafter, at the end of Kali-yuga, when there exist no topics of the subject of God, even at the residences of so-called saints and respectable gentlemen of the three higher castes, and when the power of government is transferred to the hands of ministers elected from the low-born Shudra class or those less than them, and when nothing is known of the techniques of sacrifice even by word, at that time the Lord will appear as the supreme chastiser. Mukham karoti vachalam pangam magari grimyat kripata mahamandev shri gurum dinatarinam. So this is the verse which describes the last of the scheduled incarnations in Kali-yuga. That's the Kalki avatar. And here some of the symptoms are described, as Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport. the symptoms of the worst conditions of the material world. This is the age of Kali-yuga, and we, although technically are in the beginning of Kali-yuga, we can see this already happening very much. So the first, what is described is that in the places, in the homes of the saintly person, Satam, there is no Harikatha. And those who are saints, considered saints, Satam and Vijayjana, those who are twice born, or those, as Prabhupada called them here, cultured gentlemen, there will be no Harikatha. So we see, Harikatha is missing even in the so-called spiritual leaders, saints, gurus, all over the world. There are so many teachers and preachers of spirituality, but we hardly see that the center of their preaching and teachings is descriptions of God, direct descriptions of God, Harikatha. Katha means talk or narrations of the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, there is no, they've forgotten even the name of God, what to speak of His qualities and activities, etc. And there's so much hypocrisy and cheating. People present themselves as representatives of God, or sometimes they call themselves God, and nothing genuine about the talk and descriptions of the Supreme Lord. So this is so prevalent even now, and it will be more and more. And the other symptom described here is that those who will be Nrideva, or the leaders, the political leaders of society, the kings or the ministers, they will be actually Vrishala, they will be a low-class persons. Prabhupada explains, they will be Shudras or even less. In other words, they will have no good qualities in terms of what's expected from such leaders. They will be interested in, that's described in other places in Shastra, and Srila Prabhupada many times discussed these topics, how people in general in society suffer so much in the present age because of unqualified leaders. I was just listening yesterday, I was traveling from India, and one lecture by Srila Prabhupada given 50 years ago in Vrindavan, and the whole lecture he was stressing this point that it's impossible to have peace and prosperity in society if the leaders are demoniac materialists who are only interested in their profit in some way, gross or subtle, in their position of power. And he said, how is it possible that people will live happily? It's impossible. It's impossible. He was repeating that. It's impossible. People will suffer because of lack of such good leadership. And this is nothing to do with some specific culture, like Prabhupada uses here the word castes, the higher castes and lower castes. Oh, okay, this is about India who divides society. But no, Prabhupada here gives such a precise explanation that these leaders of society are actually the ones who are guiding in the different areas of society. They are guiding the people, they are influencing them. Whatever standard they set, people like to follow. For example, he says, those who guide the destiny of the society. There is the intellectuals, they set up the topics of philosophy and science, which gives the description of reality and what's the purpose of life. So this is the intellectual class. And now in Kali-yuga, of course, this changes. And there is no, especially, since some decades, which is, they call it the postmodern period, it's typical that it's absolute relativity of everything. There is no truth. There is no anything can be truth. Especially in philosophy, that's a specific. It's so relative that how can you establish any kind of order and say and claim that yes, this is dharma, this is universal law? There's no such thing. It's so relevant. For someone is this, for someone is that. And also in science, the intellectual class, they put up theories which become mainstream. And this has been always like that. What is accepted as the mainstream, and the mainstream explanation of reality. And this is given by brahmanas, by those who have these qualities of leadership and giving guidance and leading society in that sense, in that area of here Prabhupada calls it destiny, in philosophy and science. And there's always been such a class of men, no matter how you call it. These are the people who establish these guiding principles. So when they are unqualified, when they are not real dvija, jhanas, not really trained, as Prabhupada said, they are not trained, and their lack of qualities, they established standards which are actually confusing for people, and they are degrading people. And especially this postmodern idea of relativity of everything, people become more and more confused and helpless and hopeless of everything. And then you have the administrative class in politics. They're also leaders who establish and guide society in law and order and what's proper and what's not. And then you have the productive class or the economic leaders. And this is so obvious nowadays. Someone who is well established and leading in economics, or a well-established businessman makes a comment about something. For example, the future is in cryptocurrencies. Everybody buys cryptocurrency, right? This is obvious that these are the leaders in economics. So this is the guiding principle they establish. And these are the leaders of society, and when they become degraded and they are just again interested in their own selfish goals, this is another symptom or they grossly exploit all the others, especially like the word here, the government ministers, Nrideva. They will be very low class, and they will be put in place by other low class people. That's the standard now in the world of democracy, and Prabhupada actually translates the verse like that low-born Shudra class will elect ministers who will be also low-class men. And also Prabhupada speaks a lot about that when people, that he says, of course, there are statements where he says democracy means demon crazy. But actually in other places Prabhupada says it's not a problem, the system. The problem is that the people are not qualified. The masses of people, if they are trained, they will elect also cultural and high-minded people who can establish proper spiritual principles. And because people lack these qualities, they elect people who with low qualities, and then they complain. And then they elect another one and another one. Always they complain, which is a typical also for that type of low-class people, Shudra mentality. They always complain and accuse others of their problems. And those who are on the top, they also misuse that, and use all kinds of schemes for manipulating the minds of the masses. And we all know all kinds of scandals in that area. How they can manipulate the voting, etc. So anyway, these are the symptoms which Bhagavatam so succinctly gives and Prabhupada explains, and we are witnessing ourselves. And we can talk about that and give many examples of how Kali-yuga is advancing and how much people are suffering because of that. Even devotees, it's just like a madhouse. And what is the solution? We can't just complain, and Prabhupada, he explains, this is the situation, and there is a remedy, it can be corrected. And that is by introducing this medicine in the society. This can be done by expanding the culture of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. So what does it mean, a culture of Srimad Bhagavatam? Anyone can interpret what Srila Prabhupada says here. He uses it in other places also of Bhagavatam purports. The culture of Bhagavatam, what it means practically for us. Yes? To introduce Bhagavatam in the public, or the Bhagavatas, those who are living Bhagavatas? Okay, to educate the people into the topics of Bhagavatam. Yes, Prabhuji.
Does contain the Prophet's first statement and the statement of purpose of ISKCON to by a systematic process of education to correct the imbalance of values in society to create peace and tranquility. That enables people to spiritual life to become peaceful as well as peaceful.
Right. Yeah, so here culture of Bhagavatam is, as Prabhupada put it in the first aim, to systematically educate people into the values of Srimad Bhagavatam. So yes, it means introducing through education and culture these principles of Bhagavatam. And also, because culture, if we talk only on education, we can also say that it has to be applied. It cannot be just theoretical, right? So sometimes it is said that philosophy is the knowledge, is the understanding, but culture is the application. So culture actually is the philosophy lived, right? So education, especially in the Vedic terms, means something which is applied. Unless there is application, there's not much value in the educational process. So we have to educate or distribute that knowledge, but also apply it and live it, and show it by example. And so that's very important part of the culture, to show it how practically this can be applied. And this is so important also in terms of our own society of devotees. Unless we live that culture of Bhagavatam, we live by these higher values, our teaching and preaching and education won't be effective, because there will be mismatch. People will hear some high talk and they will see something else in practice. So therefore it's very important that we live that culture and we develop these qualities, and they're perceivable qualities. So culture of Bhagavatam means to hear Bhagavatam and apply what we hear. And remember also, because Bhagavatam is in that genre of Vedic literature, Puranas, which transmits knowledge through stories. Therefore, Harikatha, stories, narrative about the Lord and the Lord's devotees. So, and all they are very practical, and they can give us example how we actually can apply this knowledge in our life. How can we become devotees? Shishi, Radha Gokulananda Shishi, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai. And we see in the lives of devotees who go through all kinds of different situations where they show how to develop and maintain and love of God. Prabhupada said, according to one account, that in Srimad Bhagavatam we can see or we can hear or see examples of all kinds of all existing different psychological situations, of instances which we can encounter in our life. In other words, we can see examples basically of everything if we hear patiently and attentively and think about it deeply. We can see that all these stories of Bhagavatam, they are just not some remote and unrelated to us stories, but they are very much practical and applicable in our present situation. So this is an important part of the process of Bhakti Yoga. Actually is the most important. As Srila Prabhupada explains in many places of Bhagavatam and in different also lectures, he explains that hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing in general, Shravanam, is the most important process of developing Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga. And as Bhagavatam itself says that in second canto, second chapter, 36th verse, that, well, a couple of verses before it says, Shukadeva Goswami explains to Parikshit Maharaj that Bhakti Yoga can give the highest good for all humanity. So through Bhakti Yoga we can attain everything. And then he says, therefore, we have to hear, speak or chant, and remember the Supreme Lord, always and everywhere. So this is his conclusion. And Srila Prabhupada explains, I'll read just one second, we'll go to that verse, because it's such an important statement that Srila Prabhupada makes. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvada shruttavya kirtitavyascha smartavu bhagavan nrinam. O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Prabhupada says, Srila Shukadeva Goswami begins this verse with the word tasmat, or therefore, because in the previous verses he has already explained that there is no auspicious means for salvation other than the sublime process of Bhakti Yoga. The Bhakti Yoga process is practiced by the devotees in different methods of hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshipping, praying, rendering service in love, becoming friendly, and offering all that one may possess. All 9 methods are bona fide methods, and either all of them, some of them, or even one of them can bring about the desired result for the sincere devotee. But out of all the 9 different methods, the first one, namely hearing, is the most important function in the process of Bhakti Yoga. Most important function. Without hearing sufficiently and properly, no one can make any progress by any of the methods of practice. So this is a very strong statement. So without hearing sufficiently and properly, no one can make any progress by any of the methods of practice. And for hearing only, all the Vedic literatures are there, compiled by authorized persons like Vyasadeva. And there are many other statements I can... Prabhupada says, for example, in room conversation with actually it's in the West, one Western influential person, he is asking what does it, because Prabhupada was saying so essential for for human society to become Krishna conscious. And that person asked, what does it mean, going to the chapel? And Prabhupada said, that's fine, that's all right, but there are 9 methods. And he says, but there are 9 different processes of which hearing about Krishna is the most important thing, Shravanam. And one excerpt from of commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to the 2nd verse of Bhagavatam, which also speaks about that, and Prabhupada makes that point also, especially that hearing or developing the culture of hearing. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Krishna enters the hearts of even those who have suddenly developed the desire to hear from the moment then they begin hearing. So Krishna enters the heart of those who desire to hear. Since they develop the desire to hear from that moment, even before having faith, it means they have developed prema simply by hearing Bhagavatam. Then how much more quickly they would develop prema if they begin hearing with faith. Because he's making a logical point that that verse says that Krishna becomes captured or becomes conquered by those who hear Bhagavatam. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says Krishna can be only conquered by prema. Therefore, hearing directly brings prema. So, and then he brings other verses from the scriptures that say that hearing either attentively or even carelessly can bring results. So here he says that, so Krishna enters the heart, even those who just have a desire to hear, or to speak of those who hear attentively and with faith. So it's very, very important. And the last thing I will say, that Srila Prabhupada in one lecture in Hawaii, as far as I remember, by personal account of one of Prabhupada's disciples, Prabhupada said, if you hear 1 chapter of Bhagavatam per day, you will go back to Godhead in this lifetime for sure, guaranteed. You just have to hear 1 chapter a day, Bhagavatam. And devotees, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, will you do it? And everyone, yes, yes. So Prabhupada, if you, again, he repeated, if you just hear 1 chapter, that's sufficient. You don't need to do anything. You will go back. The devotees, Jai Prabhupada, you will do it? Will you do it? Yes, Prabhupada. So 3 times he did it. And the devotee was standing at, and everybody said, yes, Prabhupada. And the thing is that nobody did it. So we are unfortunate, that's what Lord Chaitanya speaks about, Durdaivam. We don't have the attraction to that. So it's not cheap here, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, you just need that attraction. And Prabhupada explains in the purport to that, I think one of those verses, I think in the 2nd canto, which I quoted, that this is so essential, but unfortunately people do not desire. They want to hear all kinds of things and use, and at that time he says, they use all kinds of technology and machinery to hear different topics. But when we invite them, please come and hear Bhagavatam, they suddenly become reluctant. That's our unfortunate situation, even within devotee society. I remember a couple of years ago there was a survey among the leaders, this they call the ISKCON Leadership Sangha in Mayapur. Next year it will be the next one. It was made a couple of years, every 2 years, a couple of times. And in one they made a survey among the participants. These are the leader of society, how often they read Prabhupada's books and how long and what they have read. It was really not very encouraging. Many have not read, these are leaders who have practiced some for decades. Many have not read the whole Bhagavatam even once. Yes. Yes, or not reading regularly like that. So this culture of Bhagavatam is essential, and we have to introduce it among ourselves and among society. Thank you for your attention. Any comments, questions, reflections? Yes, Prabhuji.
Just have another example. You were mentioning how Srila Prabhupada had said that, or you were saying how even if you read, I don't know if you said imperfectly or not really seriously trying to understand,
Okay. Yeah.
read. And there was one lecture where Srila Prabhupada was encouraging devotees to chant the Sanskrit mantras. And he said, you know, this is a spiritual sound vibration. Even if you don't understand the language, he said simply by vibrating that mantra, you become purified. And then he said, similarly, the English, you read the translation and the purports, Prabhupada said, that's a spiritual sound vibration. You become purified by reading it. And then Prabhupada said with very great force, he said, even if you don't understand the English, he said, if you simply try to understand, he said, Krishna will take you back to Godhead.
Wow.
So like you're saying, there's such immense potency in Prabhupada's books that we just remember it and take advantage of it.
Wow. Thank you so much for this comment, because we can see some contradiction. Okay, it says just trying to hear or even hearing not so attentively will bring the result, but at the same time we read, unless we hear with attention, there will be no result. Okay, so what it is, but as you said, trying sincerely. Because the other point is, you can make it mechanical. And Prabhupada says, if you make it official, that's also what I read in one class, or in a purport, if you make it official and just hear as a kind of a routine, but it doesn't, but if you don't really understand, but you sincerely try, that means your intention is there and your attention is there. If it's official and mechanical, then it will be very slow.
Prabhupada also commented once in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he quoted the verse Tesham Satatam Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purakam Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yenamam Upayante, how Krishna gives the intelligence when we're devoted. And he commented that when devotees assemble together and they're attempting to discuss Krishna and the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, he said even if they don't have realization, because in that Sangha they're making that attempt, he said Krishna will bless them with realization.
Yeah, Dadami Buddhi. Yeah, thank you. Any other? Yes?
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class.
Is it working? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. So you mentioned that prema is a way of capturing Krishna. Krishna is captured by prema.
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard this so many times, capturing Krishna's heart. But I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit on it, because I don't think I sufficiently understand what that is, capturing Krishna. I mean,
Well,
I love the topic. I relish it. I just love the thought of capturing Krishna.
It's a Bhagavatam statement which the unconquerable becomes conquered by those who have bhakti, or Krishna becomes captured or becomes actually subservient. That's the word. Therefore, this is one of the arguments of Rupa Goswami that that level of bhakti prema is not given by Krishna easily, because he becomes subservient to it, to that devotee who has that prema. But it's easy to understand, because love is very attractive. That's the symptoms of bhakti, of devotional service. Rupa Goswami explains, and there are different symptoms, and the last one is Krishna Karshini. He becomes very attracted to this type of bhakti, which is on that level of bhava and prema. So love attracts, and love means pure love, spiritual with a complete selfishness is very attractive, and Krishna is very attracted by that love of the devotee.
So Krishna doesn't give prema easily, because he can be captured by it. Interesting.
Yes, that's what Rupa Goswami says, or the commentaries, Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in that verse of Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. That's one of the reasons why it is difficult. One of the reasons that Krishna makes it difficult. He doesn't give it like that. On the other side, we hear that, especially as Lord Chaitanya, he gives it very freely, indiscriminately, to everyone, whether qualified or unqualified, because of unlimited compassion.
Is that another contradiction?
Superficially, otherwise it's not, because Krishna can do anything, and that's his one of his quality. He's the greatest. He has the greatest compassion. So he can give the most precious and the most secret, the greatest thing, can give it to anyone if he likes.
I didn't mean contradiction. Seemingly contradiction.
Yeah.
Seemingly contradiction.
Yeah. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yes. Hi,
Okay.
Hare Krishna. My question is, why does the Lord instigate this age of Kali? Why is it like this? Because to inject a reflection, it seems that if we don't hear Krishna Katha and keep this tradition and system of listening and chanting in our lifetime, then there wouldn't be people to pass this down to other people, despite his mercy. Even if you listen inattentively, you may still get liberated when you die, but that's of no use. You have died, and nobody else has been given the benefit of actually using that method in their lifetime. But how is it that, I mean, anyone can answer, but like why is it so dark? I mean, what's the purpose of that for the development of mankind, for the general liberation of souls? You know, why is that happening? Does that make any sense?
Yes. Well, it's not that he instigates Kali-yuga, it's just the natural cycle of how things develop in the material world. You see, so there is the tendency to degrade in terms of consciousness, because that's the material world. It's influenced by the material modes, and with the progress of time, like the Kali-yuga ends by the Avatara, which we just read, the Kalki Avatara, and then a new Satya-yuga begins, like a new beginning. And then everybody has all good qualities in Sattva Guna, and that goes for a long time. And they are all peaceful, and they are all focused on self-realization, and they get the result of it. But then, with time, the lower modes start to become prominent, and then some bad qualities enter into human society, and then it starts to degrade. But this takes a long time, and then more degradation and more. So another yuga, and the Kali Yuga is the last that stage, and becomes too much when it becomes too degraded. And as we read in here in that verse, but in many other verses in Bhagavatam, it becomes so intolerably degraded that Krishna comes and resets it again. So you can ask then why he created the whole material world. Then, if that's the question, well, that's to facilitate again the desires of certain living entities.
Yeah, well, I was, thank you so much. I was asking more like why this gradation of changes in the material world, like, you know, from Satya Yoga to Kali Yuga, there's such a difference in
No, we make that. We make it. It's
but
not
it
that.
says nothing moves, not even a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So how is that we can just say that?
Yes, because everything moves according to his law. So he makes the law.
Okay.
Therefore, every, but he doesn't interfere with our free will, right? So we make a mess. Okay?
Yeah.
He's not guilty about the mess, but everything moves around. He sets up the rules, and we make a mess, and then we suffer out of it. He's not responsible, but still everything moves according to his rules. Therefore, not even a blade of grass. It's not that he moves the blade of grass or he moves all our things. We have our free will, but he gives the facilities and the system and the law of karma and everything, how it works. And it is for our benefit. Everything works for our benefit. It is supremely just how he puts it into place. So everything has a purpose, but we have to find it out by hearing Bhagavatam. Okay.
Want to say something?
Yes, Prabhuji. Okay, last, because I think we need to finish it by 8:30.
Thank you. Thank you for your stimulating class. Just on the same point, as you mentioned, Krishna facilitates our desires. So the thing is, if someone's got a really gross, really degraded desire, then Krishna gives independence. So he has to create a Kali-yuga where really horrible things happen to facilitate the desires of people who want to do these things. And at the same time, Krishna's own purpose of creating this creation is to ultimately liberate everyone as well. So the two things are going side by side. So I think that would explain why if someone wants to be a murderer, you know, you've got to provide a playground for that to happen.
Well, there's a lot more to discuss about that in a few minutes, because also, I mean, okay, it's not just that simple, you know, so I want to be a murderer, okay, here are a few people, you can murder them. No, it's all according to the karma, you know, those who've been killed, they killed others, and it all developed again, you know, through smaller steps of degradation. It doesn't suddenly flash of, I want to kill, you know, become a serial killer. It is something which developed, you know, through some scars and impressions, and you become really low and degraded. But, you know, in the whole universal, you know, plan of the Lord, even that degraded age has its place in terms of spiritual development. In Bhagavatam, it's actually glorified. The sages say, well, that's the best time. And it says demigods want to take birth in this age because it's, yes, you have to read it and hear it. Why exactly? I will leave it for you to find out. Why the higher beings want to take birth at this time, which is horrible, because of some special quality, and it is described there. Kaler dosha niraja. It's an ocean of faults, an ocean of problems, but there is one mahaguna, one great quality, and that is kirtanayat krishnasya. Just by kirtan of Krishna, just by chanting Krishna's name, param vrajat, you can attain victory, the greatest thing, just by that, which is not available in other times. So therefore, they desire. You want to have some comment, last comment, or it's okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, is it okay? It's 35. I don't want to go over that. Yeah.
Very nice class. Thank you, Prabhu. So, will there be a situation wherein all souls, you know, where somehow by Lord's mercy, where we all chant and everybody is in Goloka Vrindavan and there's no material world at all?
Ends the material world? And nobody remains here. That was the question brought by Lord Chaitanya. It was Vasudeva Datta, one of the greatest devotees of Lord Chaitanya. He said, "I want everyone liberated of the whole universe, and I will take their karma on me. You just liberate them." Lord Chaitanya laughed and said, "Even if they go back home immediately, it will be filled." And this universe is anyway just a small speck. It's a small a mustard seed in a bag of mustard seeds. In other words, material world is eternal, so there are always souls with certain inclinations who want that facility, so it's there. But it's cyclical. It is manifested, then it's within the body of Mahavishnu, then it manifests again, and again is not. So it's manifested for the time, and then the jivas who want their desires fulfilled in that environment separate from God, but separate outwardly, otherwise Krishna is always with the jivas, even in the material world. Internally as their heart, companion, Paramatma, externally coming regularly, as what we read in this chapter, scheduled incarnations, coming again and again, helping them, sending devotees and saints like that. So, there will be no such a time that there will be no material, it is always there. That's what Shastra describes. But still, by chanting that's what's described. Kali-yuga, if Prabhupada says we want to bring peace in society and bring the people, and that's the golden or the part of the Kali-yuga which is considered after Lord Chaitanya a Satya-yuga in Kali-yuga. And that will, again, we can ask, will that mean that all of the people will become devotees? No, Prabhupada said just a few %, but that's a lot. If you just, from whole society, a few % become Krishna conscious, only a few, that will be a great impact. If you imagine 5% of all humanity are really into something, that becomes a trend. So when Krishna consciousness becomes a trend and a kind of a cool thing, people like to wear tilak and chant and read Bhagavatam, that's Prabhupada said, that the whole society will change. Okay, yeah, cool, thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.